Welcome back to Nexus Tech, where we break down the trends shaping our world. Today, we are diving deep into what might just be the biggest shakeup in software development for 2025, the wild, meteoric rise of vibe coding. It's a term, it's a tool, it's a whole philosophy, really, and it's promising to completely rewrite the rules for how we build our digital future. Okay, so let's just start with the quote that kicked this whole thing off. When OpenAI co-founder Andrej Karpathy said the goal was to forget that the code even exists, he wasn't just trying to sound cool. He was laying out the core idea for a brand new movement, one where you, the human, could just describe what you want in plain English and have it translate directly into working software. No more wrestling with all that rigid, picky syntax. And wow, did that idea take off? By 2025, vibe coding wasn't just a niche idea, it was everywhere. But, with any big revolution, you gotta ask the tough questions. What actually happens when all this incredible hype, this powerful promise of just going with the vibes, smacks right into the cold, hard reality of building really complex software? That's the story we're gonna unpack right now. So first up, what is vibe coding really? I mean, how did this piece of tech jargon blow up and become a global cultural touchstone in less than a year? Let's get into it. Now, this quote here, this isn't from some tech blog or a tweet. This is from the official announcement by Collins Dictionary. And it just perfectly nails the appeal, right? Vibe coding promises to get rid of all that friction, all the frustration of writing code line by painful line. Instead, it's supposed to be this fluid, conversational partnership with an AI. And the speed of this thing, it was just insane. I mean, look at this. It's coined in February 2025. By March, Merriam-Webster is already tracking it as a hot new term. And by November, it's officially the Collins Dictionary's word of the year. This wasn't a slow burn, folks. This was a wildfire. At its core, the official definition is pretty simple. It's just using natural conversational language, like how you and I are talking right now, to tell an AI what you want to build. It's a massive shift from being a bricklayer, totally focused on every little piece of syntax, to being an architect, focused on the big picture, the vision. But look, a cultural shift this big doesn't just happen in a vacuum. It was fueled by a whole new generation of incredibly powerful tools. So let's take a look at the absolute cutting-edge tech that's making all of this possible. Yeah, this whole thing was powered by a huge leap in AI tooling. The big innovation was a total paradigm shift in how these AI models were trained. See, instead of just learning from static, old code, think of it like files in a dusty cabinet. These new models learned by watching developers in real, live coding environments. The poster child for this is a tool called Cursor Composer 2.0. It didn't just learn what code looks like, it learned how developers actually work. And man, is it fast. It completes tasks 4 times faster than anything comparable. And that's not just a vanity metric, okay? That speed, usually under 30 seconds, is absolutely critical for keeping a developer in that flow state. It prevents those long, awkward pauses that break your concentration and make a tool feel more like a pain than a partner. Under the hood, the engine is just humming along at around 250 tokens per second. Now, that's just a techie way of saying how fast this thing thinks. It's what allows Composer to pump out complex code so efficiently that it feels almost instant. It turns the abstract vibe of your idea into actual, real code in just a few seconds. But what really makes this tech a game changer is what they call its agentic workflow. It doesn't just throw a random snippet of code at you and say, good luck. No. It acts like a real teammate. It outlines a plan, writes the code, runs its own tests to check for errors, and then, get this, it autonomously debugs and revises its own work. It's a collaborator, not just a fancy search engine. So with tools this powerful, the assumption everywhere was that developer productivity was about to go to the moon, right? For everyone. But then, in the spring of 2025, a major academic study from a group called METR came out with findings that weren't just surprising, they were completely backwards from what everyone expected. The study asked a really simple but really important question. For expert developers, we're talking the best of the best, working on complex, established projects, do these super powerful AI tools actually make them faster? The answer sent absolute shockwaves through the entire industry. The results of their randomized controlled trial were just stunning. Before the task, developers predicted they'd be about 24% faster using the AI. Afterwards, they felt like they had been 20% faster. But the clock, the objective, undeniable proof, showed they were actually 19% slower. And this chart just visualizes that disconnect perfectly. You see these two big positive bars? That's the perception, the feeling of being faster, of being more productive. And then, bam, you've got this stark reality, a huge drop into negative territory. The vibe was great, but the results? Not so much. Let's just focus on that number for a second. Negative 19%. And remember, this wasn't for beginners just learning how to code. This was for seasoned, expert developers working on mature, complicated code bases. The very people you'd think would benefit the most were actually the ones being slowed down. This all adds up to a staggering 39-point perception gap. That's the chasm between how productive developers felt they were and how productive they actually were. It's like they felt they were flying with a jetpack, but in reality, they were stuck in rush hour traffic. So how is this even possible? How can a tool be so incredibly powerful and yet slow down the experts? Well, this is where we have to square the hype with the reality. And it turns out the secret ingredient is context. Context is everything. See, the value of vibe coding isn't this universal one-size-fits-all thing. For brand new projects, what they call greenfield projects, for junior developers, and for simple, repetitive tasks, it's a massive accelerator. But for senior developers working inside those big, complex, mature code bases, the AI actually introduces a ton of overhead, time spent prompting, reviewing, correcting, that ends up outweighing all the benefits. And here's exactly why. The study found that only 39% of the code the AI generated was accepted as is. Think about that. The rest of it, the other 61%, had to be either fixed or just thrown out completely. All that time you spend prompting the AI, waiting for it, reviewing its work, and then fixing its mistakes, it adds up to a huge cognitive load and, ultimately, a net loss in time. And we're starting to see this reality check ripple through the developer community. According to the huge annual Stack Overflow survey, positive feelings towards AI coding tools, which were up over 70% in previous years, have now cooled down to 60%. That initial, uncritical hype is being replaced by a much more nuanced, more cautious understanding. And that caution is definitely well-founded. Beyond just productivity, there are some major unresolved challenges here. Security reports show that almost half of AI-generated code has vulnerabilities. There's a big risk of creating messy, unmaintainable technical debt. And then there's this growing experience gap, where the same tool that helps a novice actually gets in the way of an expert. Hey, if you're finding this deep dive into the real nuances of tech valuable, make sure you subscribe to Nexus Tech. It's the best way to stay up to date on the trends that are truly shaping our future. So we're left with this final, crucial question. Is vibe coding a universal revolution that's going to change everything for everyone? Or is it a really powerful but highly specialized tool that's amazing in some situations and not so great in others? The data right now is pointing to the second one. And the entire future of software development might just depend on all of us being able to tell the difference. Thanks for watching.